everybody, it's Jeanette Johnson. I am the Booked Agent, your favorite real estate agent, breaking down all things books, recommendations, and reviews. Today we're going to be talking about my book pick of the month, which is the book that I've chosen for my book club. It's called the Book Club. We are on Facebook. It is a private group. And then we are also on the app Fable, which if you're not familiar with Fable, Fable is a book tracking app. You will see all of my reviews on there, the book club, and then also you'll see my TBR list, all of my book recommendations, and it's the best freaking app ever. It's very, very detailed when it comes to you being able to rate your books, put your reviews out there. It gives you options to do half stars. It gives you options to do DNF. It's so much better than Goodreads, and I am not paid to say this. Like, I truly believe that it is one of the best apps. But anyway, let's get into it. So we are talking about The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. Let me just start off by saying this as a precursor, because yes, there will be spoilers in this review. So if you do not want to see spoilers, move on to the next. But the biggest thing for me was that I wanted something that was a tad bit emotional. I was kind of on like an emotional roller coaster this month. So I was okay with finding, a selection that was going to give me some tears. And I did my research. I did find some reviews, and it was like, okay, this is a tearjerker for real. Like, Rebecca knows how to do her stuff here. And I have a few, I have the Flight and Glory series on my shelf. And then I also have, The Things We Leave Unfinished, which was one of my first Rebecca Yarros reads, on my shelf as well. And those were, some of them were a little tad bit emotional. The Things We Leave Unfinished had an ending that definitely brought me to tears, but nothing in this world has crushed my actual soul more than this freaking book. Like, I cannot even explain to you how absolutely soul crushing this book was. Like, absolutely soul crushing. Now, I did rate it highly. I did give it 5 stars. It was a fantastic read. But here's kind of some of the things that we're going to break down. First off, let's talk about the summary and the plot, the synopsis of the book. So basically, it follows a woman named Ella. She is a single mother of 2 twin children. Her brother, Ryan, is enlisted in the army, and he's overseas in like Tel Aviv or whatever, and he says, hey, listen, I've got friends here that are lonely, and since you're a single mom and you basically don't have anything going on, write one of these guys for me, write them some letters and just kind of create some sort of bonding relationship for you, somebody for you to have a sounding board and somebody for them to have a sounding board as well, since they're off fighting war and you're home alone with 2 kids, and you don't have a husband or anybody really at your support. Or at your, feet for support. So she says, okay, whatever. And she writes this letter to a man named Chaos. She ends up receiving another letter back. He's a little hesitant at first, but then they kind of have this really intimate relationship through these letters. And she admits a lot of stuff that goes on in her life. She obviously discloses things that happened with Hair X. And then he, listens to most of the things she says. I actually realized he doesn't say too much about himself. He does give a few little hints of his backstory, but for the most part, you don't know a whole lot of him. Like, he really lets her kind of just freaking say it all. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, does she say much? Like, no, Ella, come on. So she, hear my dogs barking in the background. Way to ruin a video. Right? After she writes him the letters and they kind of build this intimate relationship, they kind of essentially start falling in love over the letters. So think of like today's version of Catfish. Like, I've never seen you. He knows what she looks like because he's best friends with Ryan. And he has seen pictures of her through him. They are kind of pretty much falling in love with each other. But a lot of crazy stuff happens to her. Like, she ends up, her daughter ends up having a diagnosis of this really, rare form of cancer. And very, very quickly on, it gets super emotional. Like, I thought I was done when she told me that the kid had cancer, because I was like, that's how this ends. She's gonna pass, and I'm gonna be absolutely soul crushed, because they do take you on the whole journey, and her odds of surviving are like 10% chance. Like, her chances are very slim of survival through the cancer that she has. So I'm like, okay, this is it. But no, Rebecca's not done here, okay? Rebecca says, oh, you think that the child is enough? Well, we're actually going to kill off her brother as well, okay? And this happens, like, no joke, 32 pages in. So 32 pages in, I'm like, I can't even believe that she just destroyed me like that so early on. So anyway, Ryan's since deceased, and they have this thing where they write the last letter. So it's basically a letter that, in case something happens to me, you give this to one of my loved ones, or or a close friend or family member, that a goodbye letter, so they can kind of remember me and he writes one to the one that he knows it as. His name is Beckett, but he refers to himself as Chaos in her letters. But he writes to Beckett and he says, hey, my sister is a single mother. Her daughter has cancer. She doesn't have any support system. If I am not to, survive, please take care of her. Like, if you don't do anything else for me, go and take care of her. So he ends up going and staying at the hotel or the cabins that she owns, which was passed down from a family member. And basically, she doesn't know it's him because he has a pen name when they're writing to each other. But he's introduced himself as Beckett in real life. So they go through this whole story pretty much. She doesn't know who he is. Obviously, that comes to a head and they have to face that. And then you thought that all of the stuff regarding the cancer and everything was going to be the deal breaker here. No, like, it gets worse. It gets worse than that. And that part I will not spoil for you, because if you have not read this, everything that I have just disclosed won't really ruin the book for you. But the very ending, I can't prepare you for it. There's absolutely no way I can prepare you for it. You will absolutely shed tears reading the ending of this book. And I rated it highly because I was so emotional. Like, I mean, full on sobs, crying, like, just not going to make it for the most part. But sitting back and just really thinking about it, I'm upset. I'm highly upset. I just don't think that she needed to do us like that. Like, I just don't think Rebecca Yarros needed to absolutely take my heart and, like, crush it to dust. Yeah, I don't think she needed to do that. And I picked it because obviously February, Valentine's Day, month of love, I was like, okay, we could do like a little emotional, moving romance, right? No, this was like devastating, devastating. And I can't explain it any further than it was just absolutely devastating. Rebecca Yarros is honestly becoming one of my favorites. She has a lot of books out there nowadays, but she does romance really well. And her stories always have like a little touch of some sort of, Army reference or military or Air Force. So she does kind of pull that in, I guess, from her personal life. I've read that's where she kind of builds a lot of her stories off of, which is interesting. Sometimes it can be a little bit overkill, but yeah, you don't know what you're going to get hit with until you're hit with it. So for this book, I would definitely say read your trigger warnings, because with children and things like that, like, that might just be a little bit too much for you. You might be going through something in your life personally that this would just absolutely trigger you really bad. So I would just keep that in mind for sure, because that's in here. It does get a little gruesome when it does disclose some of the activities that happened to her brother when they were deployed. So I would check your trigger warnings with that. But there is a beautiful romance story in here. So if you're a romance reader, I can definitely recommend that to you, that you're going to love the romance story in here. But it's giving, Nicholas Sparks back in the day, where you're just absolutely in love, but then he just completely like rips your heart out at the end. So that's what I would say about this. Definitely 10 out of 10 would recommend. It was a 5-star read for me. It took me on an emotional roller coaster. I cried more in this book than I think I've ever cried over a personal situation in my life. So if you want to cry and you want a good one, pick this book up. If you are not the one and you don't even want to mess with that, don't even open the first 2 pages, because you will be stuck. And you'll be hooked and you want to figure out how it ends. So that's my review on this. Stick around for next month. We are reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab's. That is going to be our next month's read, a part of the Booked Club, which is again on Facebook. And then you can also follow us on Fable, which is the reading tracking app. But please stick around, like, subscribe, and share, and we'll be breaking this down next month. See y'all soon.